Right, soccer fans. You know we love a good tactical debate here.
Mm-hmm.
And few things get people riled up quite like ball possession.
It's a good one.
Right. I mean, we've all been there watching a match, maybe even arguing with our friends about whether having more of the ball actually means you're going to win.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll be honest, I definitely had my own preconceived notions about it going into this deep dive. But this article from Sepego El Texto really got me thinking.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're this data-driven newsletter, and they're kind of challenging this whole idea that possession equals dominance. What they found is actually pretty surprising.
Yeah, it's funny how that idea, the team with more of the ball is in control. It's just so ingrained in how we think about the game.
It really is.
But this article makes a really interesting point that possession is often a product of the scoreline rather than just a team's natural inclination.
So it's less about a team style or their DNA, and it's more about how they're reacting to what's happening on the pitch.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. You see teams, even teams that are known for maybe a more defensive approach, they might actually hold on to the ball more when they're in the lead. It's a way of controlling the tempo, right?
Yeah.
Protecting their lead. It becomes about strategy at that point.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense when you think about it like that. But do they actually have, hard evidence to back this up?
Yeah.
To prove this point?
Oh, they do. They actually use the example of Atletico Goianiense in the article, and it's a really good example of what we're talking about. So when Atletico Goianiense were either tied or losing, their average possession was, respectable 52.7%.
Right, pretty standard.
But then, check this out, when they were in the lead, that number plummeted. It dropped all the way down to 31.8%.
Whoa, okay, that is a massive difference.
Huge swing.
Talk about a Jekyll and Hyde, depending on if they're winning or losing. And I'm curious, thinking about the teams that you follow, have you ever noticed something similar where maybe a team that's known for their attack, they score a goal, and then suddenly they're content just to kind of pass it around?
Oh, absolutely. And it really underscores just how misleading, I think, just looking at possession stats, in isolation can be. Because the article actually revealed something kind of crazy. 83% of the 293 teams that they looked at actually had less possession when they were winning.
Wait, 83%? So the majority of the time, the team that's winning is actually spending less time with the ball.
Yeah.
That's wild. It feels so counterintuitive.
It really does challenge that, like we were talking about earlier, that deeply ingrained belief that possession equals victory.
Yeah, for sure. It's like that stereotype, right, about Italian teams and how they just park the bus, as soon as they score a goal, this ultra-defensive mindset. But here's the funny thing.
What's that?
So they actually address this in the article, and get this. Serie A, of all the leagues, actually had the highest number of teams, 9 teams in total, that actually maintained more possession while they were leading.
Very interesting. It just goes to show that those generalizations about, styles of play can be really misleading. But it does raise the question, though. If it's not every team that's prioritizing possession when they're winning, which teams are actually more likely to buck that trend?
So it's not just about winning, it's about how certain teams win. This article hints at particular teams who like to keep possession even with a lead. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it makes sense that if you're talking about teams that buck this trend, it's probably going to be the clubs with, a history of success, teams with deep pockets, you know what I mean? That kind of aura of expecting to win.
I think you're spot on, because that's exactly what the article says. They use teams like Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, those classic powerhouses, as the perfect examples.
Makes sense, right? I mean, those teams have the resources to bring in top talent. They've got incredible depth. Their managers, often prioritize tactical flexibility.
Right.
So they can press high, they can play on the counter, or they can comfortably dominate possession. It all depends on what the situation calls for.
Yeah. It's like they've got that Swiss Army knife of tactical approaches.
Yeah.
Now, thinking about, the teams you follow, do any of them fit that mold? Are there any teams you watch, you're like, yep, that's a top dog.
Yeah.
They dictate the tempo even when they're winning.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's important to remember that while these broad trends exist, there's always variation within different leagues, different playing styles, even individual manager philosophies, right?
100%. Speaking of nuance, I thought it was really interesting how they break down the tactical shifts that happen on the pitch depending on the score.
Yeah.
For example, they talk about this thing called PPDA,
Mm-hmm.
which stands for passes per defensive action. Essentially, it's a way of measuring how intensely a team is pressing, right?
Exactly. So lower PPDA means a team is pressing less aggressively.
Right.
And the interesting thing is how teams kind of subconsciously change their approach based on whether they're defending a lead or chasing the game. When a team's ahead, you'll often see longer passes. They're more concerned with maintaining their shape, their defensive structure, rather than that kind of like high-octane pressing that you get from some teams.
Right, so a bit more conservative when they're ahead.
Exactly.
A little more cautious maybe about how they build up play.
Yeah.
I'm curious, does that affect their passing accuracy? Because you would think if they're prioritizing possession over those quick, incisive attacks, maybe they complete fewer passes?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because the article does point to a potential dip in passing accuracy when teams are ahead. But again, it's kind of logical if you think about it, right? When you're winning, you're often content to just kind of circulate the ball a little bit more. Maybe you draw the opposition out, wait for that perfect opportunity rather than forcing those riskier passes.
Yeah, it's about playing it smart. Yeah. Not getting too greedy, I guess.
Yeah, playing it safe.
This has been super interesting, and I think it really just shows how much the scoreline can affect every little thing about how a team performs, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here's the other thing, to think about this whole possession phenomena. It isn't just in club football.
Oh, absolutely not. The article is very clear that this is not some quirk of domestic leagues or anything. They saw this pattern in international tournaments, too, like Copa America, the Euros. Even in these high-stakes matches, we see teams kind of cede possession when they have a lead.
Totally. The example that really surprised me was Argentina, during their recent Copa America win. I mean, everyone knows Argentina. They're known for their attack.
Mm-hmm.
But they actually had lower possession stats when they were winning those games.
Yeah.
It just goes to show you can't judge a team's strategy on their reputation alone, right? So are we ready to kind of bring this all home, wrap it all up?
Yeah, let's do it. We've covered a lot today.
So we've explored a lot of fascinating data today. What are the key takeaways you want our listener to walk away with?
I think the biggest one is possession stats can be incredibly useful, but they should never be analyzed in a vacuum. It's all about context. As we've seen, the scoreline dramatically impacts how teams approach possession.
Yeah, it's like that saying, possession for possession's sake is meaningless. It's all about how you utilize it, right?
Right.
Adapting to the ebb and flow of the game is what really makes a difference.
Exactly. And this research encourages us, whether we're diehard fans or armchair analysts, to look beyond those simple possession percentages that dominate post-match commentary. We need to pay attention to the nuances, the types of passes being made, the intensity of the pressing, the overall strategy at play. All of those factors combined paint a far more accurate picture than possession alone ever could.
It's about understanding the why behind the numbers, right? Why is the team suddenly sitting back after scoring? Are they trying to control the tempo, invite pressure, conserve energy for a late push? These are the questions that make watching soccer so captivating.
Absolutely. And what makes this whole discussion so thought-provoking is that it underscores the importance of using data as a starting point, not a definitive answer. It's a tool that can lead us to deeper analysis and a richer understanding of the beautiful game.
So to everyone listening, we want to hear from you. Have you noticed these possession trends in the leagues you follow? Did any of the examples we discussed surprise you? Keep the conversation going. Share your thoughts and observations with us on social media. After all, isn't soccer more fun when we're debating, analyzing,